Man has known about venereal diseases for as long as man has known about sex. Human papillomavirus is by far the most common sexually transmitted disease. An estimated 75% of reproductive age men and women are currently infected. Gonorrhea, also known as the clap, is another common STD which causes a burning sensation when urinating, as well as penile discharges. Chlamydia is one of the most common STDs. An estimated 1 million people are currently infected with it in the United States. Herpes is yet another widely common STD, characterized by cyclical, painful sores. There is no cure for herpes. Before the advent of AIDS, syphilis was the most dreaded STD. Syphilis was first recorded when it was contracted by Europeans in the New World. The founder of La Cosa Nostra, also known as the Mafia, Salvatore Lucky Luciano Lucania, was infected with syphilis. His associate, Al Scarface Capone, died of it. STDs first came out of the closet during World War II, when they threatened the prospect of victory.
Treatment must begin immediately and be kept up regularly. The disease is highly contagious. It may cause ulcers of the skin or of the bones, damage to the heart, or other serious circulatory disorders, rupture of the blood vessels of the brain or the spinal cord, paralysis, and insanity. No organ of the body is immune to attack. So don't delay seeking medical advice. Every moment that you do increases the danger to yourself and to others. All of these diseases are preventable, and their prevention requires neither complicated equipment nor extensive technical knowledge. It's a matter of a few simple precautions plus a little ordinary common sense. First, there are several elementary facts to be kept in mind. Most prostitutes are infected. The average free pickup is also likely to be infected. Obviously, then, the surest way to avoid venereal disease is to avoid sexual contact with all promiscuous women, whether they demand money or not. There are many places within a woman's sex organs in which germs may escape detection, in spite of repeated examinations by even a competent physician. For this reason, any medical certificate which a prostitute may produce is worthless. Moreover, she may easily have become infected half an hour after her examination. But if, despite this danger, you should expose yourself, there are preventive measures which will diminish the risk. The most effective single method is the condom or rubber sheath, which, when correctly placed on the penis, acts as a shield between it and the hidden germs. The condom must be perfect. A single pinhole renders it worthless. Extreme care is necessary in the use of the condom. Roll it on the penis with about half an inch left loose at the tip to guard against tearing. If a lubricant is desired, use a non-oily one, such as surgeon's jelly, for oily substances destroy rubber very quickly. Do not use Vaseline or other petroleum products. In removing the condom, remember that the outside may have millions of germs on it if the woman is infected, and is therefore very dangerous. Roll or pull it off, turning it inside out in the process. The germs are thus kept inside, where they can do no harm. The first step in prophylaxis is to urinate. The stream of urine forces from the urethra many of the germs that may have entered it. After carefully drying the penis, use one of the individual prophylactic tubes available at the sick bay, unless you can get prophylactic treatment at a regular shore station or at the sick bay within an hour. Since these tubes are effective only when properly used, you must be sure to follow the directions carefully. Tiny pockets and recesses on its interior surface in which germs may escape the ointment. If you use a good condom together with chemical prophylaxis, your chances of avoiding venereal diseases are far better than if they are omitted. That the value of prophylaxis diminishes rapidly the longer you wait. After 2 hours, your chances of getting a venereal disease are more than 7 times as great as after 1 hour. And after 5 hours, you are 18 times as likely to become infected. This prophylactic routine, together with the condom, should be carefully employed. But if for any reason you are unable to follow this procedure in every detail, report as soon as possible to the dispensary, sick bay, or shore prophylactic station. This is most important. At the station, you are given a complete prophylaxis by a trained hospital corpsman. The first step in a station prophylaxis is a thorough washing with soap and water. This kills many germs that may still be on the surface of the skin. A silver preparation is then used as a preventive of gonorrhea. This is usually protargol or argyrol and should be held in the urethra at least 5 minutes. It is followed by the application of calomel ointment, a mercury compound used in the prevention of syphilis. This treatment is simple and painless, but should be taken directly following exposure for maximum effect. You have the facts. We've told you everything of importance about these diseases. To sum up briefly, continence is the only sure way to avoid infection. However, if you do expose yourself, use a good condom and follow it by immediate and thorough prophylaxis. Don't get drunk and carelessly expose yourself without protection. A drunken man loses his sense of judgment and foolishly takes chances he wouldn't think of taking when he is sober. But if you should contract a venereal disease, don't try to conceal it. For an untreated venereal disease is extremely dangerous to your shipmates, to your family, and to yourself and your future.
Today, AIDS is the most feared, as well as the most renowned STD.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious newly discovered disease which affects mostly homosexual men. The condition severely weakens the body's ability to fight disease. Many victims get a rare form of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Others get an infection known as pneumocystis pneumonia. Researchers know of 413 people who have contracted the condition in the past year. 1/3 have died and none have been cured.
Today, researchers here at the National Centers for Disease Control said they had found several cases where people who had been sex partners both had the condition. The scientists say this probably means they are dealing with some new, deadly, sexually transmitted disease.
Researchers are now studying blood and other samples from the victims, trying to learn what is causing the disease. So far, they have had no luck.
Scientists believe AIDS began as simian immunodeficiency virus and passed to humans in Central Africa during the early 20th century. The first confirmed AIDS death was that of a Norwegian sailor who visited Africa in the early 1960s. AIDS was first detected among Haitians, homosexuals, heroin users, and hemophiliacs. More than anyone else, one man was responsible for making AIDS an epidemic.
Patient Zero is a medical and political detective story. How the medical establishment found out what AIDS was and how it spread. Patient Zero was a man, the central victim and victimizer. But even before AIDS emerged, many gays had major problems with sexually transmitted diseases that spread in and from the wide-open bars and bathhouses. For the price of admission, bathhouses offered indiscriminate, anonymous sex with multiple partners, a practice that would prove to be the key to the spread of the AIDS virus. In San Francisco, the city's Department of Health became expert in sexually transmitted diseases. The head of the infectious disease branch, Dr. Selma Dritz, now retired, was in charge of investigating the problem.
We had asked so many questions, and the main one was, how much sexual activity do you have? We would try to get very exact. I mean, we'd come up with 100, 250, 300. One man swore it was 3,500 in the course of the last 10 years, and I challenged him on. He pulled out his calculator and showed me week by week by week. Well, if two men have 10 contacts, they're infecting 20. But in a couple of weeks, if those 20 become 40, and when you have 40 men passing it around to 10 each, you have 400 all of a sudden. So the curve went up like that.
In 1979 and 1980, doctors in New York and California began reporting that gay men were dying mysteriously. There seemed to be nothing they could do about it.
Doctors in Los Angeles noticed an unusual cluster of cases of a rare pneumonia among a group of gay men in Los Angeles. At the same time, doctors in New York City noticed that there was a rare skin cancer that was also appearing among gay men. They were identified separately, but within weeks, people at the Centers for Disease Control realized that there were two parts of the same phenomena, that what you had was, for the first time in the history of mankind, an epidemic of immune suppression. That what linked these diseases was the fact that these men were losing their immune systems. You've got to remember, at the beginning, it was very mysterious. Nobody knew what caused this, but there were two leading theories. Either it was a poison, perhaps a drug that these people were taking that destroyed their immune system, or the second and far more frightening theory, this could be a new infectious agent that was making its way through the gay community.
It was the whodunit of the century. And I was born nosy. I enjoyed it very much. That was my job. It was hellish, and it was exciting, and it was wonderful, and I hated it.
Hated it because?
Because men were dying. Doctors don't have patients dying day after day after day, and 2 a day, and 3 a day after a while.
You checked out things like vegetable shortening?
We checked out all kinds of lubricants. We checked out what might have been used for enemas before going out for an evening. We checked out what kind of drugs were using to give themselves a high.
Drugs and lubricants were eliminated as possible causes. This suggested to Dr. Dritz and her colleagues at the Centers for Disease Control that their worst-case scenario was the answer. A new and lethal infectious agent, a virus, was loose in the gay community. They surmised it was transferred during sex. The problem was to prove it, because no one had isolated an actual bug in a laboratory. That would take another 2 years. So investigators from the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, began interviewing victims of the new disease across the country.
Our people had contacts down in Kern County, in Laguna Beach, in New York, in one from Montreal.
After months in the field, the CDC detectives came back to San Francisco to Dr. Dritz to report their latest discovery.
They were having a tremendous excitement. 3 times with 3 different AIDS patients, they had them name the same man as their contact, a very handsome airline steward.
Patient Zero is the name Dr. Dritz and the medical detectives used to describe this man, the airline steward, to protect his identity. Randy Schultz reveals that he was a French-Canadian named Gaetan Dugas, Patient Zero. One of the first cases of AIDS, the first person identified as a major transmitter of the disease.
It was through Gaetan Dugas that they realized AIDS was an infectious disease. By the time they were done with this study, which became known as the cluster study, they found that 40 of the first 248 gay men who got AIDS in the United States had either gone to bed with Gaetan or had gone to bed with somebody who had been to bed with him. With Gaetan, you get a horrible combination of circumstances. You get a guy who has got unlimited sexual stamina, who's very attractive, so he has unlimited opportunity to act out that sexual stamina, and he's a flight attendant for Air Canada, so he gets these flight passes so he can fly all over and have his fun, you know, in any number of cities. I mean, it was just a horrible combination of factors that helped really speed this disease into every corner of America.
Bruce, he agreed to be interviewed if we did not use his last name, was one of Gaetan Dugas' many lovers. His story was typical.
He was a very sweet, caring person. that long, and I wanted a relationship and thought this person and I really hit it off.
Good-looking man.
Very, I'd say.
Bruce says he met Gaetan in Canada, and that later he came to stay with him in San Francisco. He came down here.
He had friends out here, and I had a key to come in and out. And so mostly we saw each other by nose until one night when I got off work early because I wasn't feeling well. He came in with a friend, and I was so elated. I was going, oh, finally get a chance to see him. And he goes, bye, hon, I'm going off to the baths now. And I was devastated.
Bruce, who last saw Gaetan in 1979, says that so far he has been free of any symptoms. Dugas himself showed symptoms of a rare skin cancer in 1980.
By the time that the Centers for Disease Control talked to him in early 1982, he had already been sick for almost 2 years.
Did they suggest to him that maybe he better ease up?
Obviously, he's the first one who they're going to start saying, you know, maybe you should not have sex. And then that's where the sort of second and more troubling phase of Gaetan's story begins.
I told him that we'd had reports from people who had seen him in the baths, really cavorting around, and then telling guys, now you're going to get it too.
You talked to him?
I talked to him.
You tell him to quit this nonsense?
I told him that he was getting other people sick with it, and he said, it's my right to do whatever I want, my civil rights, I do as I please. I've got it, why shouldn't they have it? I can do as I please. I said, you can kill yourself if you want, but you've got no right to take somebody else along with you. And he said, screw you, and walked out.
In the late 1970s and early 80s, 14 young men shared this summer house on Fire Island, east of New York City. At least 2 of them had been known to have sex with Gaetan Dugas. 10 of the 14 men have now died of AIDS. Of the surviving 4, one has the virus but no symptoms so far. The other 3 say they haven't been tested. Maybe they don't want to know. When those vacation buddies started dying, no one knew what they were dying of. And outside the gay community, no one seemed to care.
There was a massive disinterest in doing anything for these awful guys that live this awful kind of life.
By the end of 1982, the public health doctors knew that AIDS was like syphilis before there was a cure, a 100% fatal venereal disease. At first, the gay community resisted the obvious prescription, changing its sexual practices.
They were screaming civil rights.
Gaetan Dugas, patient 0, died of AIDS on March 30th, 1984. As of October 1987, 24,947 Americans have died of AIDS, and experts estimate more than another 150,000 will die by 1991.
Though once a gay disease, today AIDS is disproportionately affecting straight African Americans. In fact, blacks worldwide are disproportionately affected. In some countries of Africa, as much as 25% of the population is infected. There is no cure for AIDS, and condoms provide only some protection.
Continence is the only sure way to avoid infection.